Please tell me I am not the only one getting major Izaya vibes from Durarara when it comes to this former Yakuza member turned detective. There's something about the way this author writes characters that can blend that silliness but that also bone-chilling atmosphere into one personality, or in the case of this show we have so many wild personalities, that a show like Dead Mountain Deathplay is seriously next level. We're now officially a month into this series, and each episode that ends, I am so thankful we not only have more episodes to watch in the following weeks, but most importantly that this is a split core and we won't have too long to wait, only a few months once this 12 episode run does wrap up. This show is incredible, the characters are fantastic, and one has to suspect that the main reason that Lemmings, who I'm going to assume is an assassin for hire, is there is probably because Polka had a job that was, well, we know that this organization was hired to kill Polka. They don't know why, they just take the job. I would imagine the reason someone who's covered in bandages, who's been kind of tailing him since last episode is there, is probably to finish the job. And honestly, the fact that everyone in that room was collectively fearful, I mean, obviously it says this is going to be a pretty intense fight if they do pop off, unless they somehow find a way to get out of there. But even if you do, I think this character is going to track you down one way or another. Full live reaction to this insane episode is available on my Patreon if you do want to see my full uncut thoughts. This episode continues all the main things that makes Dead Mountain Deathplay so amazing. Great comedy, great characterization, great world building, and honestly just a vibe that feels like we really haven't seen it until we see another one of the author's works get animated or they make a new one. And I love the fact that whether it's the subtle world building, like the thing that I really highlighted last week is how like the idea of almost like what's fairy tale or fiction in one world is reality in the other, and it's like the polar opposite. So where our boy comes from, this corpse god, basically magical stones are what we have as diamonds, rubies, sapphires, all these things that are, you know, you're going to basically sell a kidney to afford if you want the best of the best. Those things, if he had a bucket of them, he's basically set for life. And then he learns the shocking realization of how many billions of yen he would probably need in order to get that goal. I love the fact that what was basically like, you know, you could have your pocket change as a kid, even if you're poor, you could buy a simple stone in his original world. Now, a simple one of those, you know, that's basically a year's salary if you have a decent paying job. And those little moments go a long way because obviously, how are you going to keep the idea of like, okay, you know, if he had unlimited magic, his problems would immediately be solved. So he's saying, oh, simply, let's just find me some rocks. Well, those rocks, we obviously know what they are in this world, right? Because it's so similar to our own. And I love the fact that, you know, they have so much fun with those elements of the world building because we just keep thinking like, okay, so all the mythical monsters and mayhem that we experience in our own world would come from his world. And just the idea of like so many basic things that would make his life easier are, you know, something that either doesn't exist or fairy tale here, or if they do, you know, obviously he needs the money to do so. We also know that he has honor and a code, so he's not just going to become a thief, which makes sense given his upbringing. So I like the fact that they're almost like blending this almost like chaotically neutral character into a role that really doesn't feel like anything I can compare to as of late. And I mean, the whole idea of friendship and companionship makes a lot of sense given the short glimpse we saw of his backstory. Obviously, if we only had episode 1, we wouldn't really be able to say much. But the fact that we saw that he helped kids, he helped raise people, and he had friends, and obviously that type of connection means something. So even though, obviously, if we look at last episode or even this episode, our favorite hacker is basically saying, you know, I would sell out anyone for information if it would save my soul, right? You know, like obviously he admits that he's kind of a scumbag, but the fact that someone like our corpse god, who's obviously going by Polka, but since Polka's in now a stuffed shark, I mean, I'm going to keep calling him corpse god because obviously they're separate characters. But I love the fact that he's just such a genuinely interesting character that has this good nature, but also has that psychopath energy at a moment's notice. And I think when you have someone who clearly has a dangerous vibe, anytime a character keeps their eyes closed and it's just squinty lines, and when they open their eyes, you know, like you gotta back up. Those are some of my favorite characters, and man, this dude's a badass. Like seriously, he seems like he has that psycho energy. I mean, we got the flashback, he was killing fools left and right. And the fact that now he's working with like, you know, what should be if we follow the law, we don't go behind people's backs. Obviously, people are a little skeptical of someone like that working because he was a hardened criminal back in the day. I mean, the fact remains like this is a character who sends shivers up your spine unless you're a corpse god, because when he came in, because it's funny because in the opening, you see him jump towards the drone, and I literally said it. I was like, oh man, it would be kind of interesting to see. Is that going to be him against Polka, or would that be him against, you know, our hacker buddy? Turns out just a couple minutes later, he does exactly that. And I love how, whether it's Misaki, like, kicking him in the abs, and they use that ab footprint in order to be like, yep, I think we know who we need to look for. I love the fact that they just have this way of blending that natural comedy that this author is known for, and every studio that adapts their work just knows how to adapt it, because the comedy direction, the intense direction, it just is all so good. The fact that they're literally investigating a human knot, like it is a disturbing bodily image, though it did get me questioning because they were talking about how like Polka could end up talking if he had vocal cords and he could like infuse it. If he had enough mana, he could do it, but you know, keeping a dead person around, it pretty much uses all that up. So it's kind of interesting that they didn't take the vocal cords from any of the bodies that they kind of like destroyed last week, but then again, maybe it would be like a little curse because he would be haunted or something, I don't know. But either way, they blend that kind of like, oh my god, that is so sick and twisted into such a comfy atmosphere just so seamlessly that, seriously, Dead Mount Deathplay, it just feels refreshing through and through. And I mean, Lemmings as a character, I mean, I'm a sucker for any character who hides their face kind of bandaged up. Seems like, oh, is it injuries under there, or do you just not want to see how frightening the character actually is? This is going to be a character that I think is going to be really, really fun to follow, if not terrifying. I also love how they're not oblivious to like things like, okay, could it have been CG in terms of the skeleton hands? Well, there's too many phone videos, right? If like we literally had some way to make CG from all those different perspectives, all those different cameras line up so perfectly, we would never be able to use video evidence again. So no, it couldn't be. And yes, in this episode, they do use the skeleton hand again, but then again, most likely, probably no one saw that just because it was so high up. But then again, the more he uses it, the more single videos might pop up over the internet, and that could bite them in the butt sooner than later. But I like the fact that, you know, the characters are having fun, they're brutal, they're violent, they're self-aware of the goofiness, like the fact that they gave them such ridiculous names in terms of all the criminals that they've either caught or are going to catch, and like the characters in the room are like, who gave them the names? Well, it was him, and then he gets all embarrassed. Like, that's the type of humor and vibe that I really like from this author, and I'm glad that it's so alive and well in Dead Mount Deathplay, and this like reverse isekai kind of weird fantasy show that is so similar to our own reality, but the way they use his own reality from where he comes from into crafting this interesting world building is truly next level. I mean, we are a month in, 4 episodes into at least a 2-core production that is split, and seriously, the more I watch, the more I say Dead Mount Deathplay is hands down one of this season's standout shows. It is fantastic, it's well produced, the comedy's on point, and man, I think the action is gonna heat up in certain moments, and unless they find a way to de-escalate this Lemming situation, I think episode 5 is definitely gonna pop off action-wise. But let me know what you're feeling down below. Drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell of course so you can get notified when I upload on the channel. And like I mentioned, we do have a full live reaction available on my Patreon. You can also get video shoutouts and other perks like that if you so wish. So, till next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.